She woke up before sunrise, the dim light barely peeking through the thin curtains of the small apartment. The sound of her mother coughing in the next room made her heart ache. She knew this day would be like every other, filled with long hours, hard work, and worry that never seemed to end. The tiny kitchen smelled faintly of yesterday's dinner, and she quickly made a simple breakfast, careful not to make a sound that would disturb her mother's rest. The apartment was modest, with worn furniture and a few pictures pinned on the wall. One photo showed her mother smiling, holding a younger version of herself, back when life seemed simpler. She traced her fingers over the frame, remembering times before sickness and bills had taken so much from them. There was a heaviness in her chest, but she pushed it down. Today, like every day, she had to be strong. By 6 in the morning, she was out the door, rushing to the small diner where she worked as a waitress. The streets were quiet, only a few cars passing, the town still waking up. She walked briskly, thinking of the long shift ahead, the tips that might not even cover the medicine her mother needed, and the mounting bills waiting at home. Each step felt heavier, but she kept going. She couldn't afford to stop. She never could. Inside the diner, the smell of coffee and fried food filled the air. The early morning crowd had already started trickling in, men and women looking for breakfast before heading to work. She moved quickly, taking orders, refilling cups, and smiling even when she felt like crying. Every customer demanded her attention, but her mind was elsewhere, thinking of her mother lying sick in the next room, needing care and medicine that she could barely afford. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that this was just another day, another chance to do what she could. The diner was old, with cracked tiles on the floor and a few broken chairs that had been repaired one too many times. Despite the imperfections, it was her world during these hours. She knew every regular by name, every favorite order memorized. The customers treated her politely, some even with kindness, but most just expected her to be fast, efficient, and invisible while they enjoyed their breakfast. She moved like a ghost through the morning rush, serving plates, taking orders, and trying to keep her worry from showing on her face. By midday, the diner quieted down. She finally had a moment to sit, though not for long. She pulled out a small notebook from her apron pocket, a place where she scribbled thoughts, dreams, and plans she never spoke aloud. The pages were filled with handwriting that wobbled when she was tired, but the words carried hope. She had always loved singing, though she rarely told anyone. In this notebook, she wrote about songs she wanted to perform, melodies that lifted her spirit even when life weighed her down. Today, she thought about a contest she had heard advertised on a small poster downtown, a talent show with a cash prize large enough to help with her mother's medical bills. The thought made her heart race. Could she really do it? Could she sing in front of strangers and try to win enough money to save her mother? She tucked the notebook away and returned to work, serving more customers with practiced ease. The thought of the talent show stayed in her mind, rising like a tiny flame she didn't want to extinguish. She imagined the stage, the microphone in her hand, and her voice carrying through the room. She imagined her mother watching, a smile on her face for the first time in weeks. The idea scared her as much as it excited her. She had never performed for anyone outside her small circle, and the thought of strangers judging her terrified her. But the need to help her mother outweighed her fear. She decided she would try, no matter how impossible it seemed. The rest of the day passed in a blur of plates, coffee, and conversations. She moved from table to table, barely noticing the hours slipping by. Her mind was busy planning how she could prepare for the talent show, where she might find time to practice, and how she could keep it a secret until she was ready. She knew it would be a challenge, balancing work, practice, and care for her mother. But she also knew she had no choice. She had to try. After her shift ended, she walked home slowly, the sun dipping low in the sky. The town was bathed in warm orange light, and she felt a moment of peace. When she opened the apartment door, the familiar smell greeted her, and her mother was sitting up, looking tired but smiling faintly at her. They exchanged a quiet greeting, and she helped her mother settle back down on the couch. She cooked a simple dinner, and they ate in silence, the kind that comes from shared struggle and understanding. Later that night, She sat by the window with her notebook, pen in hand, humming quietly to herself. The moonlight touched her face as she imagined herself on the talent show stage. She practiced softly at first, then louder, letting the melody fill the small apartment. Her mother, resting on the couch, smiled and closed her eyes, listening. The music brought a little warmth into the room, a small moment of joy in the midst of their difficult life. As she prepared for bed, she thought about the days ahead. She knew she had to work hard, practice even harder, and face her fears. But she also felt a spark of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, this chance could change everything. She whispered a quiet promise to herself and her mother. She would do whatever it took to make life a little better, to bring a smile to her mother's face, and to see a future where they weren't struggling to survive. With that promise, she drifted to sleep, dreaming of music, courage, and the unknown path that lay ahead. The morning sun had just begun to rise when she got out of bed, feeling the same weight she had felt yesterday. But today, there was a spark, a small feeling of determination that made her move a little faster. She had made a decision the night before, one that scared her more than anything else she had ever done. She was going to enter the talent show. It wasn't just a contest to her. It was a chance to help her mother, a chance to give her mother the care she deserved. She quietly went about her morning routine, careful not to wake her mother too early, though her heart raced with anticipation. Walking through the streets to the diner, she tried to imagine what the talent show would be like. She had never been to anything like it before. She pictured a large stage, bright lights, and a crowd of strangers staring at her. The thought made her nervous, but she pushed it aside. She focused on the reason she was doing this, the hope of seeing her mother healthy again. Each step she took carried the weight of her determination and the fear of the unknown. At the diner, she moved through her shift with the same efficiency she always did, but her mind kept drifting to the talent show. She thought about what song she would sing, how she could practice without anyone noticing, and what she could wear that would make her feel confident. During the quiet moments between customers, she would hum softly, testing melodies she had kept hidden in her heart. She imagined herself standing on the stage, her voice strong and clear, and a wave of courage washed over her. Maybe she could really do this. After her shift ended, she went to a small corner of the apartment that she had turned into a practice space. It wasn't much, just a little cleared area in the living room, but it was enough. She closed the door, picked up her notebook, and began to rehearse. Her voice was shaky at first, but she kept going, remembering her mother's smile and the reason she had decided to try. She sang softly at first, then louder, letting the words and the music fill the tiny space. Every note carried her hope, her fear, and her love for her mother. She didn't know if she was good enough, but she knew she had to try. The days that followed were a careful balance of work, practice, and care for her mother. She would wake early, work long shifts, and return home to prepare meals and help her mother with her medications. Then she would practice in the quiet of the night, sometimes until her voice was hoarse. It was exhausting, and there were moments when she felt like giving up, when the burden seemed too heavy. But she reminded herself why she was doing this. Her mother needed her, and she would not let fear stand in the way. Word of the talent show began to spread in the small town. Posters went up at cafes, stores, and community centers. She watched them silently each day on her way to work, imagining the stage and the other contestants. Some were young, confident, and full of energy, while others were older but clearly experienced. She felt out of place, small, and unsure if she belonged. But she also felt a quiet determination growing inside her. She would not let self-doubt stop her. She had to take this chance, no matter what. One evening, after a long shift, she met a neighbor who had entered the contest in the past. They spoke briefly about the competition, giving her small pieces of advice about how to prepare, how to handle stage fright, and what to expect from the judges. Their encouragement helped, giving her a little boost of confidence. She thanked them and hurried home, her mind buzzing with ideas and plans. She sat with her notebook, writing down lyrics, practicing melodies, and imagining every possible scenario. She began to realize that preparation was just as important as talent. She needed to show the judges who she really was, her heart, her determination, and her story. The day of the first rehearsal for the contest arrived. She stepped into the community hall where the talent show would be held. It was bigger than she expected, with a wide stage, bright lights, and rows of chairs for the audience. Other contestants were already there, practicing, chatting, and laughing. She felt a wave of nerves wash over her, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was there. She had a purpose greater than her fear. As she waited for her turn to practice on stage, she observed the other contestants. Some were confident, moving with ease and smiling at the audience. Others were nervous like her, glancing around and fidgeting. She realized that everyone had a story, everyone had fears and hopes. It made her feel a little less alone. She found a quiet corner and closed her eyes, imagining the microphone in her hand, imagining the notes flowing from her voice with strength and emotion. She practiced quietly, feeling the music in her bones, letting it carry her anxiety away. When her turn came, she stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The floor felt solid beneath her feet, the lights were warm and bright, and the empty chairs seemed to watch her. She closed her eyes for a moment and began to sing. The first notes were shaky, but then she found her rhythm, her voice growing stronger with every word. She sang not just to impress the judges, but to tell her story, to express the love and worry that had carried her through so many difficult days. She opened her eyes, imagining her mother in the audience, smiling and proud. That thought gave her courage she didn't know she had. After she finished, she stepped back, trembling but smiling. The sound technician clapped quietly, and a few contestants nodded in encouragement. She felt a mix of relief and anticipation. She had done it. She had faced her fear, and it felt incredible. Even if she didn't win, she knew she had taken the first step toward something bigger, something that could change her life. She left the hall that day feeling tired but proud, her heart filled with hope and determination. Over the next few weeks, she continued to balance her life carefully. She worked, practiced, and cared for her mother, each day growing a little more confident. Her singing improved, her nerves lessened, and her hope grew stronger. She also started to notice small signs of support from friends and neighbors, encouraging words, and smiles that reminded her she wasn't alone. She realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to keep going despite it. The night before the first official round of the talent show, she sat quietly in her small apartment, her notebook open in front of her. She hummed softly, practicing the song she would perform, her voice carrying softly into the room. Her mother, resting on the couch, watched her with tired eyes but a gentle smile. They didn't speak much, but the silence was comfortable, filled with understanding. She knew tomorrow would be challenging, that she would face nerves, strangers, and the pressure to perform perfectly. But she also knew that she had prepared, that she had poured her heart into this, and that she was ready to give it everything she had. As she lay down to sleep that night, her mind raced with possibilities, both exciting and frightening. She thought about the stage, the judges, and the audience. She imagined the notes of her song soaring through the hall, reaching hearts and stirring emotions. She felt a quiet determination settle within her, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. Tomorrow, she would step onto that stage not just as a contestant, but as a daughter fighting for her mother, as a young woman with dreams and courage, as someone who refused to give up despite the weight of life pressing down on her. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, feeling the warmth of hope fill her chest. No matter what happened, she had taken the first step, and that first step was everything. She drifted into sleep with a song in her heart, ready to face the challenges of tomorrow, ready to sing for love, for hope, and for the chance to change her life forever. The morning of the talent show arrived with a mix of excitement and fear. She woke up early, her stomach full of butterflies, and went through her usual routine with quiet determination. Her mother, sitting on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her, offered a weak smile and words of encouragement. "You've got this," she said softly, and it was enough to calm some of the nerves swirling inside her. The thought of finally stepping onto a stage, in front of strangers, felt both thrilling and terrifying. She arrived at the community hall where the talent show was being held, and her breath caught at the sight of the stage. Bright lights illuminated the space, reflecting off polished floors and rows of empty chairs waiting to be filled. Contestants were milling about, some rehearsing, some chatting, and others pacing nervously. She felt small among them, unsure if she truly belonged, but she reminded herself of the reason she was here: her mother and the hope of giving her a better life. Backstage, she saw other participants tuning instruments, adjusting microphones, and practicing their moves. Some seemed confident, laughing and smiling as they performed small rehearsals. Others looked as nervous as she felt, biting their lips or fidgeting with their notes. She found a quiet corner, closed her eyes, and imagined the song in her mind. Each note carried the story of her struggle, her love, and her determination. She breathed deeply, trying to let calmness wash over her, but her heart continued to race. When it was her turn, she was guided onto the stage. The lights shone down, warm and bright, and the crowd seemed vast and endless. She could see the rows of chairs stretching far back, filled with faces she didn't know. Her hands shook slightly as she held the microphone, and she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her emotions pressing against her chest. This was more than a performance. It was a plea, a hope, and a promise all wrapped in a song. As the music started, she closed her eyes and let her voice flow. The first notes were soft, trembling with her nerves, but soon, her confidence grew. Each word she sang was filled with meaning, each note carrying the love she had for her mother and the struggles they had endured together. The audience was silent, listening intently as her story unfolded through the music. She imagined her mother in the front row, smiling and proud, and that thought pushed her forward. Her voice grew stronger, more assured, and the emotion in her song began to fill the hall. The judges watched carefully, taking notes and nodding as the performance continued. She had no idea who they were beyond the titles on the table in front of them. One of them, a man she had noticed earlier, seemed particularly attentive, his eyes fixed on her as if he were seeing the story behind the song, not just the performance itself. She didn't know his story, but she felt a sense of understanding, as if he could sense the reason she was here. She didn't have time to think about it too much. She had to stay focused on every note, every word, every movement. By the middle of the song, her initial fear had melted into a powerful energy. She moved slightly on stage, using gestures that felt natural, letting her body express the emotions she could not put into words. Her voice rose and fell with the melody, carrying her hope and determination to every corner of the hall. The audience remained quiet, captivated by the raw emotion in her singing. She had never felt so vulnerable and so strong at the same time. Every note was a piece of her heart, a plea for hope and a testament to her courage. As the song neared its end, she felt a swell of emotion she could no longer contain. Her final notes were strong, steady, and filled with sincerity. She opened her eyes, scanning the audience briefly, and saw people leaning forward, some with teary eyes, some with expressions of admiration. The energy in the room was electric, and she felt a wave of relief and accomplishment wash over her. She had done it. She had faced her fears and poured her heart into the performance. The applause was immediate and loud, echoing through the hall. She stepped back, slightly trembling, but smiling. The other contestants nodded in respect, and a few came over to offer words of encouragement. Backstage, she sank into a chair, her hands still shaking, her heart still racing. She felt exhausted but exhilarated. She had faced the stage, the crowd, and her own fears, and she had not faltered. The performance was over, but the impact lingered in her mind, a mixture of relief, pride, and anticipation for what would come next. Later, she watched the other contestants perform. Some were impressive, others less so, but all had put their hearts into their acts. She felt a sense of camaraderie with them, knowing that each person had their own reasons for being there, their own struggles and hopes. The talent show was more than a competition. It was a collection of stories, each one unique, each one powerful in its own way. She realized that no matter the outcome, she had already achieved something significant by stepping onto the stage and sharing her voice. After the final performances, the judges began their deliberation. She waited nervously in the backstage area, pacing slightly, her mind racing with possibilities. She imagined winning, not winning, the reaction of her mother, the next steps of her life. Every scenario played out in her head, and yet she could do nothing but wait. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and reminded herself that she had given her all. That, in itself, was enough. Finally, the moment arrived. The host called the contestants to the stage one by one, announcing special mentions and finalist spots. When her name was called as a finalist, her heart leaped. She walked onto the stage, trying to maintain composure, and saw her mother waiting just beyond the front row, a look of pride and love on her face. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized that she had not only performed for herself but for the person who had always been her anchor, her support, and her reason to keep going. The judges smiled as they took their seats for the final announcement. One of them, the man who had seemed particularly attentive earlier, gave her a small nod and a warm smile. She had no idea who he was, only that he seemed genuinely impressed. The tension in the room was thick as the results were announced, and she held her breath, waiting for the verdict that could change everything. When her name was finally called as the winner of the talent show, a wave of disbelief and joy washed over her. She stepped forward, hands trembling, tears streaming down her face, as the applause filled the hall. The prize money was more than she had ever hoped for, enough to pay for her mother's medical treatment and provide some relief from the constant struggle they had endured. The judges congratulated her, shaking her hand and praising her performance. She felt a mix of relief, happiness, and overwhelming gratitude. After the applause died down, the man who had been watching her so closely approached. He introduced himself politely, and she realized he was not just a judge but someone important, someone influential. She did not yet know that he was a widowed billionaire, a person who had the power to change lives with a single decision. But even without knowing his identity, she felt a sense of recognition, a connection to someone who had truly seen her for who she was, not just as a performer but as a person with a story, a struggle, and a heart full of hope. Backstage, she sat quietly, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She held the prize money in her hands, thinking of her mother, the hardships they had endured, and the journey that had led her here. She realized that this moment was more than a win. It was a turning point. It was proof that courage, determination, and love could carry a person through even the toughest challenges. She had faced her fear, shared her story through song, and come out stronger on the other side. As she left the stage and walked toward the exit, she felt a mix of emotions: relief, joy, pride, and anticipation. She could not yet imagine what the future held, only that this night had changed everything. Her heart was full, her spirit lifted, and her resolve stronger than ever. She had taken a leap of faith, and it had carried her to a place of hope, opportunity, and the promise of a better tomorrow. The next morning, she woke up with a mix of excitement and nerves that she had not felt in a long time. The memory of the talent show still lingered, every note of her song, every glance from the audience, every heartbeat in the tense silence of the hall. She could hardly believe it when her name had been called as the winner. The prize money sat in her small bag, a tangible sign that her struggle, her courage, and her determination had been recognized. Yet, she knew there was more to come, something she could not yet see or understand. She arrived at the community hall for the final meeting with the judges, unsure of what to expect. Contestants were gathering, chatting quietly, some still processing the results, others excited about the future. She felt a mixture of pride and nervousness, the same feelings she had experienced on stage, but stronger, more intense. This was the moment when everything could change, when her life could shift in ways she had never imagined. The man who had watched her so attentively during her performance approached first. He extended his hand with a warm smile, and she shook it, her heart pounding in her chest. There was something about his presence, a calm authority mixed with kindness, that immediately put her at ease. He introduced himself as a supporter of the arts, someone who had spent years helping talented people find opportunities they might otherwise never have. She listened intently, still unaware of who he truly was. She sensed that he was special, that his interest in her was more than casual, but she could not yet grasp the magnitude. He asked her about her life, her work, and her family, showing genuine interest in her story. She spoke openly, telling him about the long hours she worked as a waitress, the challenges of caring for her mother, and the hope that had driven her to enter the contest. She did not hold back, not knowing that every word she spoke was being weighed not just for talent, but for character, for heart, for the essence of who she was. She felt a connection, a sense of trust that made her open up in ways she had never done with strangers. As she spoke, he listened carefully, nodding and asking thoughtful questions. She began to sense that he had the ability to change lives, that he had seen countless people in need and had chosen to help those who showed courage and integrity. She did not know it yet, but he was a widowed billionaire, a man who had endured loss and hardship himself, someone who understood struggle and compassion in ways few could. His interest in her was not just about her performance. It was about her resilience, her dedication, and her heart. After their conversation, he handed her an envelope, explaining that it contained more than the prize money. Inside were instructions for her mother's medical care, contacts for specialists, and a financial package that would relieve much of the burden they had been carrying. She stared at him, speechless, tears forming in her eyes. The reality of what he was offering was overwhelming. Her mother's treatment, her future, and a sense of relief she had never known were all within reach because of this unexpected act of generosity. The man then asked if she would be willing to continue speaking and performing at events he was supporting, helping others who were struggling as she had. She nodded, unable to find the words, feeling a mix of gratitude, humility, and hope. This was an opportunity she had never dreamed of, a chance to use her talent not only for herself and her mother, but to inspire and assist others. It was a responsibility, yes, but also a gift she felt unworthy of, and yet deeply grateful for. Over the next few days, she worked with him to arrange her mother's treatment. Doctors were contacted, appointments scheduled, and financial details settled. She accompanied her mother to each visit, watching as the care they had long feared would be impossible became real and accessible. The relief in her mother's eyes, the gratitude she saw, and the slow return of her mother's strength filled her heart with an emotion she could barely contain. For the first time in years, she felt hope, not as a fragile flame, but as a steady light guiding her forward. During this time, she also spent moments learning more about the man who had changed their lives. She discovered his history, his own experiences of loss and resilience, and the motivations behind his generosity. It was not simply wealth that made him influential. It was compassion, wisdom, and a genuine desire to help those who were willing to work hard, show courage, and act with integrity. She found herself inspired, not just by the opportunity he had provided, but by the example he set through his life and actions. One afternoon, he invited her to visit one of the programs he supported, a center for young people pursuing their dreams in music, arts, and education. She walked through the facility, seeing children and teenagers practicing, learning, and expressing themselves freely. The energy in the room was vibrant, filled with laughter, music, and creativity. She realized that her own journey, her struggles, and her courage were now part of a larger story, a story of hope and opportunity for others. She felt a deep sense of purpose, a feeling that her life was taking on a meaning she had never imagined. The man continued to mentor her, offering guidance on how to develop her talent, manage her new opportunities, and balance her personal life with her growing responsibilities. He encouraged her to stay true to herself, to remember why she had started, and to use every chance not just for personal gain, but to make a difference in the lives of others. She listened, absorbed, and reflected, feeling a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and determination. She knew that this was more than a chance to perform. It was a chance to grow, to learn, and to give back. Her mother's recovery progressed steadily, and with each passing day, she felt the burden on her shoulders lighten. She was able to focus more on her singing, practice without fear of neglecting her responsibilities, and even explore new songs and styles. The support of the man, the knowledge that her talent could be a force for change, and the stability he provided allowed her to see possibilities she had never dared to imagine. She felt a sense of freedom, a sense that life could be different, brighter, and filled with opportunities she had only dreamed of. As the days turned into weeks, she reflected on her journey. From the long, tiring shifts at the diner, to the quiet nights of practice, to the courage it took to stand on stage, every step had led her here. She realized that the talent show had been more than a contest. It had been a turning point, a moment that revealed the strength within her, the depth of her love for her mother, and the potential for her life to change in ways she had never imagined. She felt a deep gratitude for every struggle, every fear, every tear, and every note she had sung. One evening, after a particularly long day of appointments and practice, she sat quietly with her mother, the envelope of support from the man beside them. Her mother reached out, holding her hand, and said softly, "You've given me more than I could have ever hoped for. You've given me hope, life, and a reason to smile again." Tears filled her eyes as she hugged her mother tightly, feeling the warmth and love they shared. She realized that all the effort, all the courage, and all the sacrifices had led to this moment of connection, relief, and joy. In the weeks that followed, she began to embrace her new life with courage and humility. She performed at small events, shared her story, and inspired others with her journey. She balanced her responsibilities with her newfound opportunities, learning to navigate a world she had never imagined was possible. Each performance, each smile from an audience member, each acknowledgement from the man who had believed in her, reinforced her sense of purpose and her belief that hard work, courage, and love could change lives. The man continued to support and guide her, offering opportunities to grow, to perform, and to reach people who needed inspiration and hope. She felt a bond of trust and respect, recognizing the importance of his mentorship and the generosity that had changed their lives. She learned not only about music but about resilience, responsibility, and the power of using one's gifts to make a difference. Her life, once limited by struggle and uncertainty, now stretched before her with possibilities and promise. Through it all, she remained grounded, remembering the long hours at the diner, the quiet nights of practice, and the determination that had brought her here. She understood that success was not just measured in prize money or opportunities, but in the impact she could have on others, the love she could share, and the hope she could inspire. Her mother's health continued to improve, her confidence in her own abilities grew, and the connection she felt to the man who had helped them became a guiding light in her journey. As she looked back on the past months, she marveled at the path that had led her from uncertainty and struggle to hope, opportunity, and support. She knew that her courage to step onto that stage, to share her story through song, had opened doors she could never have imagined. The realization that someone had truly seen her, believed in her, and helped her, filled her heart with gratitude, humility, and a renewed determination to make the most of the second chance life had given her. She felt ready for whatever the future held, confident in her abilities, and committed to using her gifts to bring light, hope, and inspiration to the world. Months passed since she had stepped onto the talent show stage, and her life had changed in ways she had never imagined. The small apartment where she and her mother had struggled for years now felt different, filled with warmth, laughter, and hope. Her mother's health had improved steadily, the weight of worry lifted from both of them. She no longer had to spend every hour worrying about bills or medical expenses. There was a sense of stability, a sense of breathing freely for the first time in years, and she felt a deep gratitude for everything that had led them here. Her performances had continued, small at first, then larger, each one opening doors to new opportunities. She traveled to local events, performing for audiences who were moved not only by her voice but by her story. People came up to her afterward, sharing their own struggles, expressing how her courage and determination had inspired them. She listened, touched by their words, realizing that her journey had become more than personal. It was now part of something bigger, something that could inspire hope and courage in others. The man who had changed their lives continued to guide her. He provided advice on how to handle attention, how to grow her talent, and how to balance her responsibilities with her opportunities. He encouraged her to remain humble, to remember where she had come from, and to use her experiences to help others. She appreciated his guidance not just for the practical advice, but for the way he helped her understand that success was not just about money or recognition. It was about making a difference and staying true to oneself. One afternoon, he invited her to a gathering of young talents he was supporting. She watched them perform, listened to their stories, and felt a sense of connection to each one. She remembered her own journey, the nights of practice, the fear of stepping onto the stage, and the hope that had driven her. Seeing these young people working hard, dreaming big, and facing their fears reminded her of herself not long ago. She offered encouragement, shared advice, and even sang alongside some of them, feeling the joy of helping others discover their potential. Her relationship with her mother had grown stronger. They spent more time together, not just caring for health and household needs, but sharing laughter, stories, and dreams. Her mother often listened as she sang, eyes shining with pride, offering words of wisdom and encouragement. The bond between them deepened, strengthened not only by shared struggle, but by the joy and hope they now experienced together. She realized that her courage and determination had not only changed their circumstances but had also brought them closer in ways that would last a lifetime. She also began to explore her own growth in other areas of life. She learned about stage presence, voice control, and audience connection. She practiced diligently, not for competition, but to become the best version of herself. Each small achievement, each improvement, filled her with a sense of accomplishment and pride. She found that the more she grew, the more she could give back, and that understanding brought a deep satisfaction she had never known before. One evening, after a performance at a community center, she walked home with her mother, reflecting on the journey they had traveled. The streets were quiet, the sky painted with the colors of sunset. She felt a sense of peace she had never experienced in the years of struggle. Life had not been easy, but every challenge, every fear, every moment of doubt had led to this point. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to face it, and love was not just a feeling but a driving force that could change everything. The man who had mentored her continued to watch her progress, proud of her growth and the way she had embraced her opportunities. He invited her to participate in programs that helped others like her, young people facing challenges and seeking hope. She embraced these opportunities, knowing that her experiences could guide and inspire others. She shared her story openly, spoke about perseverance, and encouraged others to follow their dreams, no matter the obstacles. Her performances became a source of inspiration in the town and beyond. People who had heard her story followed her journey, celebrating her successes and learning from her resilience. She met other performers, exchanged ideas, and grew her network, understanding that talent combined with hard work and heart could create opportunities that might have seemed impossible before. Each performance, each interaction, reminded her of the power of courage and determination. At home, life continued with a sense of normalcy and warmth that had been missing for so long. They spent evenings together, cooking meals, talking about the day, and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. Her mother's laughter filled the apartment, a sound that once had been rare, and she treasured every moment. She realized that success was not just about achievements in the public eye, but about the quiet, meaningful moments shared with those we love. Over time, she also reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple act of courage, stepping onto a stage despite fear and uncertainty. She remembered the long hours at the diner, the nights of secret practice, the worry for her mother, and the hope that had never faded. Each step had been difficult, but each had brought her closer to a life of possibility, joy, and fulfillment. She understood that every hardship, every tear, every moment of doubt had been part of a journey that had made her stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Her relationship with the man who had helped her also evolved into one of mutual respect and understanding. He continued to provide guidance, but he also listened, learned from her experiences, and valued her perspective. She realized that true mentorship was not just about giving advice or resources, but about seeing the person fully, understanding their potential, and helping them grow into the best version of themselves. She felt grateful for the role he had played, not just in providing opportunities, but in helping her discover her own strength and purpose. As she looked toward the future, she felt a sense of hope and determination that had once seemed impossible. She knew that challenges would still come, that life would continue to test her courage and resolve. But she also knew that she had the tools, the strength, and the heart to face whatever came her way. She had learned that success was not just measured by money, recognition, or opportunity, but by the difference one could make in the lives of others and the courage to pursue dreams despite fear and obstacles. Her music continued to grow, touching the hearts of people who listened. She sang not just for herself or her mother, but for anyone who needed hope, courage, and inspiration. Her performances were filled with the same honesty, emotion, and dedication that had carried her through the talent show. Each note, each song, was a story, a message of resilience and love, and people felt it deeply. She had become more than a singer. She had become a symbol of hope, perseverance, and the power of the human spirit. At home, her mother often told her how proud she was, not just of her talent, but of her heart, her determination, and the way she had faced life's challenges. These words filled her with a quiet joy, a sense that her journey had meaning beyond the stage or prize money. She realized that the true reward was not just success, but the ability to bring light, love, and hope into the lives of those around her. As the months continued, she embraced her role as both performer and mentor, sharing her story, supporting others, and continuing to grow. She learned to balance ambition with compassion, talent with humility, and opportunity with responsibility. Each day was a step forward, a chance to make a difference, and a reminder of how far she had come. She felt empowered, not just by her success, but by the realization that courage, love, and determination could overcome even the greatest obstacles. The journey that had begun with fear, uncertainty, and a desperate hope had transformed into one of purpose, fulfillment, and joy. She had faced challenges that once seemed insurmountable, found strength within herself, and received support that had changed her life. Her mother's health had improved, her own confidence had grown, and her impact on others had expanded far beyond what she could have imagined. Looking back, she understood that every step, every moment of struggle, and every note sung with heart had been part of a journey that shaped her into the person she had become. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the opportunities, but for the lessons learned, the love shared, and the courage discovered within herself. She knew that the future would continue to hold challenges, but she was ready, armed with determination, heart, and the unwavering belief that she could face whatever came her way. And so, she continued to sing, to inspire, and to live with purpose, knowing that her journey had transformed not just her life, but the lives of those around her. She had turned fear into courage, struggle into hope, and a simple dream into a reality that brought joy, inspiration, and love into the world. She had discovered the power of persistence, the strength of heart, and the beauty of a life lived with purpose, courage, and unwavering love.